and welcome to the debate. I'm your host MAQBOOL with you at PTV World. In today's show, we will be taking a look at two important stories. The first is with reference to the situation in Pakistan regarding a hike in the terrorist activities within the country. This has been something of concern for a while now, and we've seen that in the recent past there has been quite a few incidents which have been categorized as terrorist incidents within the country, and this is something which of course begs to question whether or not the strategy that has been implemented before or the mechanisms that have been devised before are actually going to be resolving the problem of the terrorist attacks within the country. There has been a lot of talk with the facilitation of the Afghan Taliban as well. However, we have seen that repeated attempts at ceasefire have failed and they have not been continued long enough for the negotiations to bring fruit. We also understand that in the recent activities, particularly in Karachi and then in different parts of North Waziristan as well, there have been operations that have been conducted. We've also seen the two most wanted terrorists of the TTP have also been targeted and killed in an exchange of fire in North Waziristan. And then we also see that in Karachi there have been Chinese officials who have also been targeted, and we also know that an IED blast has also occurred recently, which has at least killed one and left 9 injured. And this of course points to the fact that there has been a lot of uplift in the kind of terrorist activities that we witnessed, particularly from organizations within Pakistan as well, and there have been evidences with regards to elements, foreign elements also being involved in this. We've seen that there was talk, an announcement on the 30th of March with reference to Operation Al-Badr, and this was launched against the security forces, and this of course means that there needs to be perhaps a revision of the National Action Plan and whether or not we'll be able to counter this threat regardless of the kind of support or not that we have from the Afghan Taliban, and how we're going to be engaging with them in the future. So that's going to be our focus in the first segment of the show today. Our second segment is going to take a look at the situation in India and the appointment of the CDS in India, a post that had been left vacant since the previous CDS passed away in a helicopter crash. We also understand that this is something that has seen a lot of delays. There has been a lot of contention with regards to who is going to be the new CDS. And then now what we've seen is perhaps that the entire post is being reassessed because of course there were a lot of overlaps with reference to the mechanisms and the roles that were earlier identified with the CDS. Whether or not we're going to be seeing a revision of this post, how these mechanisms are going to be resolved, and what sort of distinctions are going to be made in terms of the roles and responsibilities and the mechanisms needed between different positions within the Indian Army is what we're going to be taking a look at, and also exploring whether the downside of appointing a CDS at the moment is perhaps higher than not having one, and what is under consideration when it comes to this post. For this and more, I've been joined in the studios as always by FARRUKH PITAFI and Raja FAISAL, and for our first segment I have been joined online by Brigadier Retired Mr. Rashid Wali Janjua, who's Director Research IPRI, and I've also been joined by Khwaja Hamad Akbar, who's the Executive Director, Council on Global Policy, Islamabad. Thank you very much for joining us. I'll start with you, Brigadier Janjua. When we look at what is happening within the country, we've of course seen that the terrorist incidents keep on increasing, and we've seen a recent increase in such activities. But then again, we also understand that this is something that has been a matter of concern, particularly since we've seen the Afghan Taliban take control in Afghanistan, and it has been also part of the discussion around what Pakistan needs to be doing in this regard. We've tried to resolve and come up with strategies that counter such threats. However, it seems perhaps that those strategies are not relevant enough, or they're not addressing perhaps the issues that need to be resolved in order to counter these threats. Do you think that we need to be able to revise those strategies?
Thanks, Anna. I think we need to appraise all those approaches and take a stock of what we are doing. And I think at the moment there's a very active engagement going at the military level also, and at the civilian government's level with the Taliban government to coordinate aspects related to the terrorism and to sensitize them about the concerns that the spike in terrorist violence in the last couple of months has been witnessed. And the approach definitely needs to be more streamlined, and we need to first of all assess the environment as to what is prevailing in Afghanistan. We know Taliban government is trying its best, but there is a capacity and there is a will deficit also, which is born out of capacity deficit. Taliban government is headed by Mullah Haibatullah Akhundzada, whose oath of fealty has been taken by the TTP also. So in a way, TTP is under the protection of the Taliban government. So the question arises as to why they have not been able to rein them in, and as to why they've not been able to convince them to stop attacks on Pakistan's armed forces and civilians also.
And that's a very good question, Brigadier Saab. But there are at this moment two strands of terrorism that we witness. One is, of course, led by TTP, the other by Baloch terrorist organizations. We saw the attack on the Chinese teachers in Karachi. We saw similar kind of attacks elsewhere as well. Now the question is what to do with them. At least when it comes to TTP, you have somebody you can talk to, that is the Afghan government. But how do you approach the Baloch issue, sir?
Yeah, you're correct, because there are linkages also between the two. And we know both are getting nourishment from each other, especially the Balochistan security landscape is quite complicated, in which there are now lateral linkages between the two. Now, answering your question as to what we should do about secular insurgency or these terrorist acts in Balochistan, well, Balochistan insurgency or the acts of terrorism have been witnessed in the past as well, but of late there is a change in the character of that insurgency, and that is it is shifting more in virulence towards the middle class and shifting away from the tribal leadership into the Makaran belt area, areas like Panjgur, Kech, Turbat, Gwadar. So this is the belt which is getting the maximum elements who form part of BLF, which is headed by Ala Nazar. And the reason perhaps is the deprivations and unassuaged grievances. What we can do is both at kinetic and non-kinetic level. On kinetic level, we need to ramp up our intelligence gathering, our intelligence-based operations, our penetration of such organizations, and choking of the terrorist financing. We know these are all externally linked. RAW is very actively supporting and abetting, along with other global powers also, who do not want our relations with China and CPEC to fully fructify. So for that, our intelligence agencies need to penetrate and need to conduct the intelligence-based operations to break the lineaments of these insurgent organizations. And at the second level, we need political engagement, especially with the youth and that community.
That is important, Sana, when you actually you have brought in the other guest. I'm going to further ask another question regarding this, and I'm going to put it to Brigadier Saab. But first,
right, Mr. Hamad, when we look at what is being discussed with reference to perhaps the kind of response that there needs to be of the intelligence-based operations or other responses where we have uncovered a lot of involvement of foreign elements as well, and there has been a lot of evidence. But what needs to be the measures that need to be taken in this regard? Because it doesn't seem to be that perhaps those elements are being engaged or are being brought in the forefront, or even in terms of international platforms being used against terrorist activities within the country.
Thank you, Sana. I actually agree with whatever Mr. Brigadier Janjua has said so far. in recent 9 months, as Afghan government was taken over by the Taliban regime, over 100 Pakistani facilities were attacked. And in this regard, before we talk about the measures that we define, what we have to do, first we have to assess the capacity and capability of our counterpart. In the recent interview, Mr. Suraj Haqqani, who is the interior minister of the current Afghan regime, said that they are facing internal threats. And in the same interview, he uses a very interesting phrase that our land will not be used as a threat to anyone. My question here is that a regime who is facing itself internal threats and is acknowledging that they are not able to control the internal threats they are facing, how they can help us and how they can keep their promise with the US or in the Doha Agreement. At the same time, their tone towards Pakistan is threatening, and they're actually conveying us that they will retaliate and they are very much keen to exercise this option. And here the irony is that this is happening at the same time when Pakistan is fighting the case for Afghanistan on humanitarian ground. This is the tragedy of this current situation. And in recent past, as the TTP, we were talking to TTP on Afghan Taliban's request. We must look at the major demand that caused the failure to the negotiations we were having with TTP. That was the status of former FATA region, that army should wake, and the semi-autonomous status of that region should be again in practice. So this is what Pakistan cannot accept. So here we have to deal with very cunningly that Pakistan should not respond to the threats in a way that they would cause us a trouble in more sense. We should be.
You're right. You're right, Brigadier Junjua Sahab, I just wanted to come towards you related to a fact which, of course, you highlighted it so many times, and we have been highlighting in our program since a long time, and that is that obviously RAW is behind, and it is facilitating and it is financing terror in Pakistan, be it BLA, be it TTP, and be it originating from Iran or originating from Afghanistan. It is taking place. Of course, they are using our fault lines, and China knows it as well, and time and again China highlighted it as well, that whatever is going on related to Balochistan especially, it is to dent the CPEC effort and bilateral relations between Pakistan and China. Isn't it the right time that, as India has so many fault lines as well, shouldn't China be thinking about, of course, using them fault lines and investing there as well? If India is not shying away from investing in Pakistan, shouldn't China be investing in their fault lines, especially Chicken's Neck, especially Mizoram, Manipur, Naxals, all of these? Shouldn't they be doing that, sir?
I think that we leave for Chinese to decide, but at an operational level, yes, they might be, countries have their own interests, they might be doing. Most importantly, what we need to understand at this point of time is that in Afghanistan, there is a Taliban government, which is not a monolith, which is a farraginous blend of old guard, operational commanders, and certain truculent and refractory kind of field commanders. So yoking them all together and reining them in, and at the same time ensuring that ISKP also does not forge linkages with them, it's quite an undertaking. So at this point of time, as you might be very well aware, that at military level there is an engagement right at this moment going on with Taliban, and with Haqqani's Americans have also, contacted, and there are some signals that might be kind of a rapprochement is on the cards. What we need to promote at this point of time is the strength of Taliban government to stand on its 2 feet and to ensure that there is peace. And I think for that, a regional solution, yoking China, Russia, Iran, and Central Asian countries together to kind of accord maybe a kind of a quasi-recognition or to strengthen of Taliban regime, to give them a measure of stability so as to enable them to reign in those elements which do not probably.
I'm fascinated by Faisal's question, and then I'm also fascinated by the conclusion of your argument as well, because most of the decision making then goes beyond the pale of Pakistani policy making. But I wanted to actually bring your attention back to what is happening in Pakistan as we speak. And I have 3 tiered questions, sir. The first one, I remember that the past NSA actually gave a presentation in which he actually brought up the matter of Raw's attempts to unite TTP and Jaish and other similar organizations with the Baloch separatist or Baloch sub-nationalist terrorist organizations. One, at this moment, I'm appalled by the fact that the country doesn't have an NSA. Do you think that who is, can you tell us who is actually calling shots on these matters? This is a question, the first tier. The second one is we are fighting Baloch nationalist terrorism for quite some time. And in the past, we were told that they are hiding in Afghanistan. Now we know that at least they are not there. We are told as much. So have we actually developed some kind of alibi where exactly are they coming from, who is financing them, how it goes around and how it materializes? Finally, regarding Balochistan, we have been talking about these solutions for past 1.5 decades, but hardly anything happens. And the issue keeps on simmering. Is there an out-of-box solution at this moment?
Okay, your first point about National Security Advisor, and at this point of time, because of the change in the government, there is no appointee to that slot. But let me assure you that the system of the state functions, and there are institutions which are actually taking care of this counter-terrorism aspect. And
can you name them, sir? Can you name them?
Yes. Those are our intelligence agencies, our premier intelligence agencies, our NACTA, our counter-terrorism respective departments at provincial level.
NACTA
so
has become a think
it's an
tank.
architecture that functions, and the armed forces and the premier intelligence agency, so they are in the forefront. So there is no vacuum per se, but I do agree with you that for a sooner or later this slot needs to be filled up to give traction to our coordination efforts on that score. Your second question was
Hamad, I wanted to come towards you. Hamad, there is a sort of hurdle whenever something happens, especially in the recent times. We know that there are a couple of examples where 2 of the students of the universities, they were involved. Of course, they were BLF, BLA, but in the universities they were trying to conduct their activities, terrorist activities. And after that, of course, the probe is going on, and once the probe goes on and a number of students, they get picked up or they are probed, of course, all of the student bodies and everyone, they start coming out, and there is an outcry all over, and it sort of creates a hurdle for the state itself to have them accounted for. How can it be countered? I mean, in the universities, how can it be countered, and how the state can deal with it?
Right, and Hamad, if you could also add to the question, what you earlier spoke about with reference to Pakistan responding in a way that perhaps is more costly than the kind of measures that we need in terms of resolving the issue. Something that is going to perhaps fall back on us. Can you please explain what exactly is going to be that cost, or what sort of strategies were you pointing at in terms of them falling back on us? And also with regards to the Afghan Taliban, there was also discussion in terms of building their competency. And I understand that that would help them deal with issues not only at home, but otherwise as well. But do you think that the reliance that Pakistan has perhaps on the Afghan Taliban, specifically with reference to the TTP, is advisable considering where the stage that they are at right now and the kind of threats and issues that we're currently facing? Do you think that perhaps we need to be able to come up with something regardless of the Afghan Taliban facilitation?
Thank you, Sana. I'll first answer your question that we are engaging with Afghan Taliban on militarily and diplomatic on every front, but nothing fruitful is coming out of that. Why? First, we have to analyze the capacity of Afghan Taliban. Are they really capable? If they are really capable of controlling the Afghanistan territory, then what is there? They are not. What is there? Why they are not able to counter the TTP? Because in recent times, I have no doubt about the Taliban intention, but the realities are the phenomena happening, making me doubt one, that there is something fishy happening there. So in Ashraf Ghani regime, there were TTP leaders who were jailed, and now they are very much active in the terrorist activities against Pakistan. If they were in jail, why they are active? So it is, and at the same time, it is very difficult to distinguish between who is Afghan Taliban and who belongs to Pakistan, who belongs to Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan, because they look alike, as same as each other. So you can't you can't really have a difference at local level. So this is a very difficult thing. So in this regard, first we have to analyze the capacity of Taliban, and then we have to offer them to build the in-house capacity of their forces and their intelligence agencies to really counter that Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan for us.
Right. Hamad, do you think that that's actually something that is feasible for Pakistan to do?
And can we afford this kind of time, because Pakistanis are being killed as we speak?
Yes, Pakistanis are being killed, no doubt, and it's a sad fact as of the moment. Yes, this is possible, because we have to go and opt an out-of-box solution for this. An out-of-box solution is to offer Taliban, but before offering, we have to assess their capacity in real times, and that where they lack.
Right. My only point is that it seems that we would be investing a lot. Will that give us the kind of return we want?
We can have operations from our territory to their territory with their facilitation and with their help of their local intelligence. This is a feasible option to combat a counter-terrorism policy, and this policy would be developed.
Too much to ask for. About the students of the university.
Yes, about the students of university, because this is a very delicate matter we are facing since decades, and students are very much frustrated of this behavior of intelligence agencies, because they think they are being objectified, and of their ethnicity of being or their domicile being Baloch. They should be handled with kindness. They should be monitored, and there is a need of special training to the people or the handlers, those look after these students, because this will trigger humanitarian crisis-like situation in Pakistan, and there are enemies, people here working here in Pakistan who are ready to take this out of the basket and flag.
All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Hamad and Brigadier Janjua, for joining us and being a part of the debate. Unfortunately, that's all we have time for our first segment. Our next segment is going to be focusing on the issue of the appointment of CDS in India. Of course, this is something that we've talked about, and we've tried to understand who it is going to be after the passing of the previous one. And then, of course, it's been put to question whether or not this post is going to be of value, and the kind of mechanism mechanisms that perhaps need to be reevaluated. Faisal, this is something that we have tried to understand and explore as to who it is going to be, but now the question is different in terms of whether or not it's in the benefit of the Indian institutions in terms of the appointment of a CDS or not having one. Which one is it, do you think, in terms of the kind of issues that are being discussed with regards to coordination between different departments and the mechanisms that have been laid out, whether or not this post is of any value, or do you think that it is going to move towards perhaps only an operational one and is going to lose the kind of emphasis that it had in the past?
Sana, to me, I think there is only one solution, and that is that they should not be having it, and this is what they are considering, that they should not be having it. In case if they do have in future, then of course the personality, whoever it might be, of course it might be former Air Chief Bhaduria, or there is another name which is coming up, and that is of Lt Gen Linda Singh. Two of them, they are the candidates for it, and that is not being seen until until August or September. They might decide about it, but right now they are facing a dilemma, and that is that after General Rawat, of course, at that time, General Narwane wanted to become CDS at that time rather than being offered at this time. That is why he has rejected this offer, and he is not interested in getting into this slot, because he considers this as a very political slot. Why? There is only one reason. We remember that in February he wanted to become at that time, but right now he's not becoming. The only reason behind it is that he was seeing how things are moving. He could sense that Janab Pandey, who became Chief of Army Staff earlier this month, he was getting promotions and he was getting favors only because of one reason, that he was being lobbied for by RSS and by BJP.
All right.
He could sense that.
Okay, let me also welcome in the debate Mr. Linda Singh, who's joined us online. He's a veteran of the Indian Army and an international and defense strategic analyst. Thank you very much, Mr. Singh, for joining us and being a part of the debate. Faisal earlier was saying that it's going to be in favor of India to do away with the post of CDS. Do you agree?
To that, because you should be very clear. You should be very clear about two things. Governments and countries don't take decisions abruptly. We have deliberated for the post of CDS for quite long. There has been need. There was a justified requirement. We have still considered it for quite long before letting it mature into actuality. And that is why I would rather say every country has its own need. Every country has its own way of functioning. This is what India is all about. That yes, we take time to take such decisions. Though ideally, I would say such things should never take time. It should be instant. But well, there is not a vacuum there. There is somebody who's looking after that part. The chairman of the Chief of Staff Committee is still there. And otherwise also CDS was supposed to be the permanent chairman of the Chief of Staff Committee. So there is no void. But yet, ideally speaking, I will tend to agree with anybody that it should have been announced long back. Yes.
All right. Farrukh, when we look at the re-evaluation of this post, and of course there's also the question of how it wasn't just the post of CDS, but perhaps many other roles that were taken by the CDS as well. And then of course it was also overlapping with other departments that were also created within the Indian Army. And now when it's being reassessed, do you see any particular fundamental changes that can be made with regards to this post and the other departments?
Right. Sana, first of all, let me protest the unfairness of it all. Last time when General Pandey actually became the Army Chief, you actually ran the audio clips or video clips of FAISAL, but you forgot that when CDS, the plane crashed, even before that, I kept on pointing out that this was a post, in my humble opinion, wasn't relevant and perhaps it is not going to be manned. I actually pointed out that there's an idiom or adage that is, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. right? These were the exact words. And I kept on pointing out that this idea of redoing all the theaters, redoing the institutions, and actually mixing them will create a lot of burden for a country that keeps on facing two challenges at least at the same time.
If they don't appoint a CDS, will play your play.
And secondly, there was another, magic that was involved. If you remember, when the CDS post was created, it was not merely Chief of Army Staff or Joint Chief of Staff Committee post. They also gave the CDS another post that was Chief Bureaucrat, that was head of the DMA, Department of Military Affairs, which practically controls all military affairs with the exception of border financing, right? Infrastructure, roads on borders, everything else was under his purview. So that actually created, and he was going to be one point of contact between the political government and all the forces. So that actually created a different kind of dynamic, and I kept on saying that that perhaps wasn't a great idea because it is cost intensive, because it is going to take a lot of time, and India's army's performance wasn't bad even before that either. So why actually go for it? And given that the size of the country and the size of the forces, perhaps they could have stuck with the old paradigm. So today, that point actually gets qualified if they are reassessing the whole position. But I think that it has something to do with the elevation of General Pandey as well, because they trusted General Rawat implicitly. After that, they didn't trust General Nirwane, but now they trust General Pandey. So at this moment, his post by default becomes strengthened, and I think there's a possibility that you won't have any CDS.
Yeah, Colonel Shilin, talking about the trust on obviously General Rawat, we remember that while he was CDS and talking about the theatre commands, there was a disagreement between him and somebody who's going to be considered to be one of the next CDS of India, that is obviously former Air Chief Bhaduria. He did not agree with General Rawat at that time. They had a row and it came on media as well at that time. There is a famous saying that we are a separate arm, we cannot be controlled by another arm. This is what he said at that time. Sir, why is it happening? Would we be seeing a sort of strategy change, because General Rawat came up obviously with his own thoughts related to theatre commands? Would we be seeing, if Bhaduria becomes next CDS, he will be, bringing something else?
Let me put it a little differently, because probably this point has been harped upon quite a number of times. Maybe out of the panel in which we are speaking right now, I am the only one. I am the only physical eyewitness of that particular program, where whatever you are mentioning happened between the CDS and the Air Chief Marshal Bhaduria. Firstly, it never happened between them. The anchor had asked the question to CDS in another session, and he asked in still another session to Bhaduria sir, that sir, does the Air Force become a supporting arm? That was the question asked. And he says, no, question doesn't arise, which I also agree. Let me tell you one thing. It is to be seen. It is, sir, allow me, it will clear a lot of things for you.
Carry on, sir. Nobody else is talking, sir. Carry on.
All Navy, Air Force, and Army are supporting out each other. There is no doubt about it. There is nothing called as supremacy in it, and that is why the CDS job is to bring the joint mechanism, to bring the synergy that yes, there is a seamless operation between across their own interest as an arm or service. So, as far as anybody is saying that performance of Indian Army, well, sir, actually you know it. We don't require a judge for that. But you saying that whether CDS post is relevant or not, It may appear your perception, I'll not deny you your perception, but at the same time, we felt there was a need, we created that need, and that need is still there because theaterization is yet to take place in its own way on ground.
Right. Mr. Singh, can you also help me understand exactly what need the position of CDS actually fulfilled? And when you say the need is still there, then that means that perhaps the post of CDS is relevant and the kind of role that the CDS plays will not or cannot be fulfilled by any other position or department. If that is so, then why are we talking about doing away with the post?
No, nobody is talking about doing away with that post, firstly. Nowhere, nowhere. Now, coming to your specific question, Sana, when we say that we require this post, why do we require this post? Because somebody within the defense services has to rise above this being from Army, Navy, or Air Force for the interest of the joint services for the country. So that is why it becomes one advice to the government and to make the government understand that no, I'm not talking about Army, I'm not talking about Air Force. It is overall defense forces that if they operate together within best means, then this is the way to go forward. What is
Right, Colonel Singh, I highly regard what you're saying, sir, because last time you came to this program and we were discussing General Pandey, you actually referred to him as a highly professional general and perhaps secular as well. Then we saw the picture of him offering namaz in Kashmir. So that was very heartening and
that is not Monday. You are talking about the GOC 15 core.
Right. My question at this moment is regarding something else, regarding the process of integration or jointness at this moment. If you actually, we understand that this idea came out of Kargil war, and then it was recommended at that time that it should be actually, there should be jointness. But the question is, as organically, if it were to evolve on its own, and you were to plot a regression model, how much time do you think it would have taken otherwise organically for this jointness to materialize? Do you think this could be achieved within few years or decades perhaps?
Firstly, let me tell you, sir, I think you are getting mixed up with that word Pandey. The GOC 15 core was a Pandey and the Chief of Army Staff is a Pandey separate. The Chief of Army Staff is an engineer officer, whereas Corps Commander 15 Corps is a Sikh Halai officer. Luckily, I know both of them very well. Now,
I'm talking about the picture of the current army chief that was released by India recently, and there he was sitting on the prayer mat.
That was GOC.
Oh no, sir, no, you are mistaken.
Okay,
go back.
Okay, I can be.
If you find even an iota of my word as wrong, I'm prepared to apologize. Kaan pakadkar apologize kar sakta hu. Because I know the
actually, I don't know, there always is some communication gap between you and me, because I was trying to pay you a compliment and you actually very effectively dodged it. So it is your choice. So carry on with the comment.
Now, I must tell you one thing very clearly. When we are talking about the CDS, and as rightly brought out by you, the Kargil committee also strengthened the need of CDS. The need was already there. This was being talked of that if we have to grow the way at which we are growing, if we have to see the threat, the way it's coming, the threatization is one of the ultimate solution which we cannot escape. Yes, it's already taken time. It's not taken less time. Even if we go by only Kargil, even the is such a long history now, and it has come, the CDS post has come now. So let me tell you one thing: if journalism is to be talked of, it is very simple. As an army man, when I interact with my counterpart in infantry, I perceive that the fire plan has to be made in a particular way, the way it suits firing units. Person who's going for Dhawa, the infantry officer says, no, hell with everything. I am not bothered about safety. I am not bothered about your inconvenience. I want fire right ahead of me by 2 meters, which I can't, because that is part of my training. So such things. When we are talk of joint
quick
mechanism,
question, sir.
what is joint? I'm supposed to, as a gunner officer, I can tell you, I'm supposed to plan the air attack.
Exactly.
To precede my infantry attack.
Colonel Shailendra, can you hear me, sir? Yeah. Colonel Shailendra, you know, if we look at the past, of course, since Rawat was obviously, you know, after his demise, his offices, they were taken over by General Narwane at that time, but he did not become CDS at that time. Of course, till the day he was in the office of Chief of the Army Staff of India, he was taking care of that. But he was not offered, or if he was offered, he declined. Why did he do that? If he was doing all fine, everything was fine, why he did not want to become a CDS? Can we say, as you know, there are many analysts who believe, and defense analysts I'm talking about, they believe that he is too secular for BJP's government, too secular for RSS. That is why he's not becoming the CDS, because he considers that with the appointment of General Pandey, there are signs of saffronization within the Indian Army. Am I right, sir?
And General Saab, if the matter of CDS TORs are going to be re-examined, are they going to be re-examined by Ajit Doval or somebody else this time?
Let me tell you one thing. When we are talking about CDS, Rawat, and now we have come into secularism. Tell me one thing. Raja Saab, you yourself are disagreeing to what you are saying. You are on one side saying that the previous chief is a very, very secular man. So he did not accept what BJP. Now BJP, why make him if it doesn't suit them? So they would have never offered it. You see the delay. The delay has to be very, very justifiably analyzed. The delay part is that we brought in people who have retired. We have made the selection a little larger than what it was. Otherwise, it would have been very easy. Just keep going by seniority and make CDS. No, that is the way government wants. And that should be the way government is. They should look for somebody who is most suited for the job. Yes, it is taking time, unfortunately.
Right.
So that means General Narwane did not suit that, sir.
And,
if you are saying yes. You only said he is too secular. If too secular, why would BJP make him or allow him to refuse?
And Colonel Saab, by the way, your correction earlier, when you were correcting me regarding General DP Singh, at that time, that was also very poignant, correction, because that also reminded us that it wasn't the current army chief who was actually participating in any kind of namaz. So that also indicates that there is going to be a change in the direction overall.
Sir, allow me. This is absolute personal trait of geopolitics. I am the most to tell you this because I have been in that house, in that ADC appointment. You tell me. I can only tell you this. All commanding officers go to their troops in their Mandir parade. Brigade commanders also.
Should we expect from, sir, should we expect in coming future, should we expect from Corps Commander 1 Corps offering namaz in Delhi or somewhere, sir?
But why will the GC 1 Corps come to Delhi to offer namaz? He will do it at Mathura. He will do it here.
All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Linda Singh, for joining us and being a part of the debate. We're almost out of time. Thank you very much for being part of our show and for talking to us with regards to the CDS, their appointment, and of course, whether or not this post is going to be continuing within the Indian Army. That's all we have time for, unfortunately. Thank you very much for joining us in the debate.